Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Demas. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of OpenAlex, and in that role, I spend a lot of time thinking about sustainability. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you and to hear also from the other groups. I'll just quickly do a little bit of an intro to OpenAlex. I'm not going to do much because I think a lot of the people here already know it, and I could spend an hour talking about an intro very easily, and I don't want to do that. But specifically on sustainability, talk about our structure, our openness, our funding, and our contingencies, which are sort of four things that we think about a lot with our sustainability plan. The first, we try and take all of the world's research information and get it organized and openly published in a single place. So that's a very broad, ambitious goal. We're modeling ourselves after the Library of Alexandria that was meant to have an open index of all the world's knowledge. So we take information on research outputs and connect it to things like institutions, publishers, authors, funders, other works that are getting cited, topics, sustainable development goals, things like that to create this open graph. And there's sort of three major components to how we distribute or push that information out to the world. Our data is entirely open, and that's a really important part of our sustainability plan as well that I'll talk about in a moment. But unlike many of the legacy systems, anyone in the world can go and download the entirety of our data as a snapshot. We promise quarterly, but realistically, we've been monthly for the last little while. And it's completely free, and it's under a CC0 license, which is great for a lot of reasons, but most people in the world who have needs for research, open research information, don't have the capacity to deal with a data set this large. So the people who do love this, but obviously we have to have other ways of offering it. So we also have an open API. And I'd say this is where the magic is with OpenAlex. It's open, well documented, and people are using it all around the world. You get up to 100,000 free calls a day and 200 responses per call. So 20 million responses per day for free without registering or anything like that. But the beauty of the API is that it really allows you to access any of the data in any way that you want to create derivative systems, to access just the data you want. Really, there's a lot of magic that goes into that. But again, a lot of the people who have open research information needs don't necessarily have the capacity to deal with an API. I think with things like ChatGPT and a lot of LLM coding that people are doing, we're seeing some very sophisticated outcomes of building research dashboards from people who have otherwise previously never coded. And because our API is completely open and documented, actually the LLMs do a really good job creating things off of that. But that's an aside. And then the third way that people can sort of access it is with an open user interface. And the open user interface, I think just a screenshot of it really nicely demonstrates the types of things that you can do with OpenAlex. So you can find research just like you can in Scopus or Web of Science or Dimensions. That's sort of the works over on the left. But you can also do report by and some basic analytics. So just as an example, I'm in Canada, and you can see I just had a quick report by on what's going on in Canada, the top institutions, the work types that we have, the contributions to sustainable development goals, the topics, just as an example to show what anyone can do. And this is also completely open. You don't need to register. You don't need to pay, obviously. There are some additional features if you do register, like you can sign up for email alerts. We have to have your email, things like that. But otherwise, it's meant to be completely open. And to give you a sense of the scale of use of OpenAlex, we do about 20 million API calls a day, every single day. This map on the left is monthly active users on our user interface, sort of shown at the graph of the world. The US is where we have the most activity, but there is definitely activity all around the world in people using OpenAlex. It's been cited already 600 times in academic publications and has more than 10,000 mentions. We're really excited by this explosive growth. We started at the end of 2022, so really we're just not even 3 years old yet, but this just gives you a sense of who's using OpenAlex. And when we think about sustainability, we do think quite a bit about the user community who are using it and how they're using it and what functions need to be sustained as well. So I know that was really quick. I didn't want to talk too much about OpenAlex. I really wanted to get into the sustainability because these are some of the things we don't often talk about that I think people like to hear about. First, really importantly, is the structure of our organization. That's really important to know. We are registered in North Carolina as a 501c3 or nonprofit. That's really important. Anyone can go read our articles of incorporation. That's basically our governing documents. But importantly, we don't have an owner or stockholders or shareholders. So you can see I put impact story. Impact story is actually our legal entity. So if we've done contracts with any of your organizations, you've seen this. We say impact story doing business as our research or doing business as OpenAlex. But impact story is our legal entity. And we've been operating since 2012. Started with Impact Story was one of our original products, but things like Unpaywall, Unsub, all of these have been offered through this organization. I'll just quickly point out, because we do get questions a lot, particularly around today's geopolitical climate, we are also registered in Canada. I mentioned that I'm joining from Canada today. Our co-founders, Jason and Heather, spent a lot of their time in Canada when they were building this. And so this is something that comes into play sometimes as well with sustainability that we can ask questions on, but I won't talk too much about at this point. But our organization is more than just that document, obviously. There's two boards that I want to talk about as being really important to helping govern OpenAlex. The first is our actual governing board. So this is a board of directors of that entity. So Heather Joseph, Joanna McIntyre, Ethan White, and Jason Priam, who are all really strong members of the community who are very well dialed into open infrastructure and have a lot of experience in this space. These four people have a legal obligation to make decisions based on our mission that as defined in the incorporation document. So I wanted to say that's a really important part of our governance, and they're thinking at every one of their meetings, are we meeting our sustainability targets? Are we on path towards sustainability? They've been doing that for years with our other products like Unpaywall and Unsub, but now I prepare some of the reports that go to the board meetings. They're thinking about our revenue targets and our sustainability plan every time they meet. So that's a really important thing to say. The other is less about sort of legal obligations and ensuring a sustainability plan, but more about making sure that we are developing OpenAlex in a way that serves all the needs of the community. We're really excited to start this just the end of last year, our first community advisory board. And this was modeled after DOAJ's community advisory board, partially because when we asked the community who does the best with this type of advisory board and open infrastructures, every single person said DOAJ, which was a pretty renowned thing. And they were very generous to let us essentially copy their model. We made a few adjustments, but basically have their terms as well. And you can see from this group, we're really lucky to have a rock star cast of people from the community across the world who are really contributing to that advisory board. Okay, I want to talk a bit on how openness comes into our sustainability plan, because it's actually a really important part of it. I mentioned that the OpenAlex dataset is entirely open, and we're doing that very intentionally. We're trying to shift the model of these research information databases or graphs being data is the money, and then you pay for access to it. We're trying to shift from that model to one where the data is completely free and open, and time and services on top of that are what you charge for. This is the model we use for Unpaywall as well, where anyone can access Unpaywall. I think there's 800,000 people using the browser extension every month in either Google Chrome or Firefox. So lots of people are using it freely and never supporting it. But then there are people who pay for time and services specifically on top of the Unpaywall data set that we provide that sustain that. And that took years to get to that point with Unpaywall, and it's going to take a few years to get to that point with OpenAlex, but that's our model there. But we do get a lot of questions. What happens if you guys, for something happens to the organization and you can't continue? And we think a lot about that. We try and think of every contingency of what could happen to make sure that the vision of OpenAlex can continue regardless of whether or not we're there. So open data is really important. Persistently open data is also an important part of that. We did upload a snapshot of OpenAlex to Zenodo. They were really fortunate. We were really fortunate that they let us upload such a large document onto there. But we also know of about a dozen organizations around the world that are maintaining their own local snapshot every month. And we keep them in mind as well as people who are maintaining copies of OpenAlex outside of us as well. But it's not just the data, because if we go under for some reason and um, all of the data is there, but it doesn't help going forward. So what we've really tried to do in OpenAlex is make sure all of the source code is completely open as well. And you can go onto our GitHub and see all of the source, all of the development that we're doing. We're in a really exciting time right now. I don't know how many people are following, but we're launching the new OpenAlex system tomorrow. And we have people who are watching our progress every day and sending us messages like, oh, that was such a cool idea. And it's just fun to have this community that can look so intensely at what we're doing every day and provide suggestions and also ask questions as well. But that open code is really important so that, again, in these worst case contingency plans, anyone can pick up the mantle and replicate this. Now, it won't be easy. It's taken us a lot of time to be able to figure out how to do all of this, but it will be possible. And to the same point earlier with data, it's important to have that persistent. And so we have archived this with software heritage as well. Funding is obviously one of the most important pieces of sustainability. And so I do want to talk a bit about that. I mentioned briefly that we use this model where data is free and open, but time and services on top of that costs money, and that's what helps support this. That works really well once you have an offering to sort of sell. But the way it's worked in the past is it took years for Unpaywall to get to that point. And so I do want to say that the way that we've operated since 2012, so the last 13 years, has been we receive grants to start or to create a new project. And always as part of that project plan, there's a sustainability path. So you can go on to Open Grants if you're interested, search for Priam, and you can get all of our grants. I don't think the latest welcome grant is up there yet, but we have submitted it. We put all of our grants online so that anyone can go and look at them. But it gives you a sense of how we operate. For instance, if you go and look at the Arcadia grant that funded the development of OpenAlex, you'll see in that grant that it's front-loaded, where a lot of the money is up front and it tapers down over the years. And as part of that, we have sustainability or revenue targets that OpenAlex will get more revenue over time so that we can sustainably operate after that grant is gone. And a large part of that grant was thinking through the contingencies and making sure this is something that we're very thoughtful about. So given that, happy to share this is where we're at with our OpenAlex annual recurring revenue. So you can see we're just shy of 800,000. I think actually we just crossed that this morning, which is a pretty exciting benchmark for us. But to give you a sense of scale, it costs about $4 million a year to run OpenAlex in its current iteration. There's lots of iterations where it can grow in many directions, but we talk about everything being free. Actually, our servers cost a lot of money. We added 100 million works this week, and so OpenAlex has really ballooned in a very large way towards that goal of having all the world's research information, but it costs a lot of money. And so this is on track with our sustainability plan. So our revenue targets in the first couple of years of the grants are lower and sort of linear, but in this next 2 years of the grant is really where we're looking for that sort of faster growth to really meet our sustainability targets. And I didn't do a graph on this. If people are interested, I can do that later. But to give you a sense, it's about 1/3 universities and about 2/3 sort of companies of different flavors. So this could be pharma, this could be AI companies, this could be companies building academic software, for instance. So it's about 1/3 institutions and about 2/3 companies. That 1/3 with institutions also has governments in it, and I should say that's a really important piece as well. But sort of the way that we imagined our sustainability plan was very much working directly with institutions and governments. The challenge that we found is that they are much slower moving, and a lot of them are facing budget crises right now. And even the common narrative that we thought would be, which is, we cancel this expensive product and we can give money towards the cheaper one, has been a real challenge at a lot of organizations. Some of them are only able to cut things. They're not able to add any new line items. The sales cycle for a university we're finding is between 12 and 18 months. So it takes a really long time to have these conversations. And perhaps more interestingly and problematically for us, we've found organizations like companies that we deal with, they have a sense of the value they need and an ability to pay for that value directly. Whereas a lot of universities we've been working with have many different processes set up that decide who gets to spend money when on what. And those processes, I'll give you an example. With one university, they were doing a bid for a tender for which bibliometric data set they were going to use. And we thought this is a great example. There's discrete criteria. We're going to see how this goes as an open infrastructure. There were 98 different user stories that we had to prepare our case towards. So you can already tell this is something that took me a week probably to do those use cases. Had to do a 3-hour webinar and training with faculty members. And then we actually did some development time because our approach was, okay, there's 98 criteria. The ones that we're not good at, we could actually do great at by the time we present. And we got really positive feedback, but at the end of the day, that decision was made by a vote of 11 faculty members who weren't even required to go to the presentation. So this is the kind of challenge we're finding with institutions that we were surprised to find. This is mostly in libraries, a research office, the president's office, institutional planning. They usually have a little bit more flexibility in these things. But I don't want to say that all libraries are like that because obviously some of our biggest support at the beginning, like Sorbonne, there are libraries who are starting to say we need to invest in these things instead of we're just buying the things that are already ready. And I think that's a really difficult narrative to switch. And that's something that I think is the future of sustainability, at least of our product. Just in the last minute, I don't want to spend much time, but I do want to say we do think about these things every day. What happens if we go broke? People ask that all the time. So we make the source code available, we make the data available, and if we go broke, we're still around, so we can find some path forward. If we get bought, people ask this a lot. We are a nonprofit. We're not very attractive to organizations, but I will say we have had 2 buyout offers since I've been here. People still find ways to do it. One of the ways that we try and de-risk that is, again, making everything open. The only thing that our organization owns is our logo. And that's also an important thing for everyone here to know is we don't own the data, we don't own the source code, we just own the logo. So really little incentive for people to try and buy us out. Get trumped. I mentioned that this is something that we get asked quite a bit, and it's a reason that some European organizations have not wanted to move forward with us because of US politics. We are also in Canada, but all of our servers are in the US. It's much cheaper that way. We can raise prices and move somewhere else, but it's also important to know we're not getting money from the American government. Almost all of our funds are from, well, there's none from the American government at all. So that's an important thing to know. Become evil. The famous case with Google, it used to be don't be evil was in their terms. And we've talked to our lawyer, there's really actually nothing you can de-risk. There's nothing you can put into your articles of incorporation that could stop boards from one day drifting in that direction. So I think this is, again, why it's important to have that community transparency. You know who's on our board, you know what our articles of incorporation say. And then the other 2 are a little bit more about us, but the thing I want to say about that is we have people now all around the world that are using OpenAlex and some very sophisticated coders and some very sophisticated librarians and a lot of people with domain knowledge. What we're trying to do by making it open is making sure that more and more people are able to do what we're doing so that they can take the mantle one day if any of this happens. And a large part of bringing me on was to help make sure that there was someone else if something happened to Jason, that someone else could replace it, could take this on. So we think about all these things, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions, but I'll stop there. I know there's a couple moments for clarifying Q&A, and we'll have more questions at the end. Thank you.
I think it has been an excellent opportunity. And, I really like, Kyle, how you're presenting, and I'm pretty sure you just touch upon only a few things that, we go through, not everything. Okay. So maybe it would be good to have, if this discussion is fruitful, maybe, you know, we can think of how we can continue this discussion. So I will present it from a bit of different view, so I may not go into the details of, you know, of what Kyle went through. I will be probably a step, you know, just, you know, a bit up, and I will present, you know, how we're dealing with things in OpenAIRE. So this is what, you know, we call the holy grail of sustainability, because whenever, you know, whenever we're infrastructures or public or non-profit, this is, you know, this is in everyone's view. So just let me present briefly who is OpenAIRE. Is that we are European scholarly communication infrastructure. We are federated. We have been established as a non-profit organization based in Greece, in Athens, Greece. But we have been essentially in operations from 2009. What I would like to say here is that we have, you know, a slightly different approach, because we were initially a top-down from the European Commission project, you know, in order to do open science in Europe and and beyond. So we have shareholders, you know, if you can call it this, you know, we have 55 members. They're all universities. They're all funding organizations, universities, or key organizations in their countries, or public, no commercial members. So that is in our statutes. We are in 36, we have members from 36 European countries. And what I would like to say, the way we are approaching OpenAIRE is that we have a footprint in Europe, but as any other scholarly communication, we have a global outreach. So this is, you know, that's why we have global collaborations around the world. Now, what is the way we are approaching things, okay? Because what we don't see the OpenAIRE just as the OpenAIRE graph. We see that we are building an open scholarly communication infrastructure. And this has been from day one, because if we try to build a service and, you know, try to move into just one way of, you know, having this open information infrastructure only, we think that, you know, that may be limiting, because our mandate as an organization was open science, okay? So based on this open science, of course, there's open research information, but it has a I'm not pressing any buttons, it's just going forward. So what I would like to say here is that OpenAIRE is an ecosystem of infrastructure, community, and policy. So if you see, we have three pillars. Services in the middle, so we are a very service-driven oriented infrastructure, but also it's about the network. It's about the connecting people in the national open access desk we have in each European country, and now approaches around the world. And then it's about training and building capacities. And it's not just about training an OpenAIRE graph. It's not only about training on, you know, on open research information, is training on open science. So this is, you know, this is something that as an infrastructure is very hard, is very complicated. Not hard, you know, it is hard, but it's very complicated. Now, before we talk about you know, sustainability, and then of course it's open infrastructure, openness, transparency, governance. We have these 55 members with working group inside OpenAIRE. We have, you know, we are opening up to the world now. So all of this, you know, the governance is very important. So I assume that all of the open infrastructures have an open governance. So now the understanding the costs, you know, I would like to, you know, to go deep into this, I think. What we need to understand, and I see, you know, I hear the numbers that were mentioned, and you know, they are projected in our operations also. But what we need and what we constantly need to do, and this is something because we understand that the community needs to understand. We know them, but the community needs to understand. So there is a service operation and maintenance. Okay, this is, machines, this is people, getting the graph every month, getting Argos, the DMP, getting the connect and all the services that we have, because I forgot to say that we have 15 services for open science in OpenAIRE, and the OpenAIRE graph, which is, like OpenAlex, is one of them. So the service operation and maintenance is one cost. Then we live in a world that research is not stale. Okay, so we need to think about service evolution, and service evolution is not just more content for the graph. It's not just more like entities for the graph, but the service evolution is something that we need to think as an infrastructure, how we can co-shape with the members and other players in Europe and the world, how we can co-shape these research and innovation ecosystem. So for example, for us, the research open information is one thing, but then there is so many things. And the service evolution, sometimes, it has to be there before people are thinking about it. So to give them a sandbox kind of idea how to move into these open infrastructures and into a more open and transparent way. But sometimes the service evolution follows, what the community is doing. And this is something that, is very, very costly. And you have to have your radar open all the time to see, where you're before, when you get the community with you, or when you follow the community needs. So this is very important. Then, because we are open infrastructures and we don't have the tons of people to curate content, for example, or to have the community calls or whatever, we have the standards. We invest a lot in standards, and this is a hidden cost. For us, we participate in RDA for the Science Knowledge Graph Interoperability Framework, for the machine actionable DMPs, for the fairness. So we participate a lot in standards because these standards, they manifest themselves in the graph or in the other services. Then, as I said, it's the community training, is the community feedback loops, which is very, very costly. And then, of course, for us, for Europe, it's EOSC, is the European Open Science Cloud, because what we see is that we are building nodes in the Federation of the European Open Science Cloud, and we need to, the scholarly communication and databases like OpenAIRE Graph have to be there. Just to say that additional cost for an infrastructure like OpenAIRE is that, I'm not going to go into this, is that what we want is to embed the services that we do into the institutional and to the European and global infrastructure. And that has additional cost, okay? So when we have Zenodo as a service, and when we link, the claiming and the deposit to the graph or to our data management plan, that means an additional integration, because what we believe is that sustainability of open infrastructures will come by value. And the value is where institutions, they don't just, appreciate the data, but they appreciate the practices, and also for researchers. So this is, so I'm still on cost, just to show the sustainability path, just, for the OpenAIRE graph, okay, we have the aggregation, curation, duplication, enrichment. We have the quality part. We invest in a lot of quality because it's the duplications. We have AI algorithms, AI readiness, provenance of anything. That is costing money. And why do we do that? Do we do that because, it would be good for bibliometrics or something? No, we do it because what we believe is this is what the openness and the transparency needs is, if you have read what we have done in the QARA Open Infrastructures for Responsible Research Assessment, what we said from the beginning is that the open infrastructures that we are investing a lot of effort and money in community effort, not just the effort, our effort, is that they need to surpass what we have now. Because if we are trying to duplicate what we have now from Web of Science or Scopus, I think we are going into an unfair competition. And then the other thing that, of course, it was presented by OpenAlex very well, is that costs on openness, transparency, and accessibility, the APIs, the servers, this is a lot of cost. Then, as I said before, the standards and interoperability. We have the OpenAIRE guidelines as a global baseline for repositories, and then in EOSC they are being used for data repositories together with DataSite. And then this is, for us now, it's time to update them, okay, to see where the community is following. That is a cost, okay. Community approach, community calls, are networks that they have, the network in every country that goes into this. This is also another cost. Last but not least is the infrastructure. I'm not gonna discuss this. We know how expensive things are getting to be. And think about, the GDPR compliant storage and services, because whenever we give a service to a European country, one of the first things that they are asking us, do you have ISO X and ISO Y? And this is very important. This is costly. Then, of course, last but not least here is the growing need for AI-ready infrastructure. We're talking about LLMs, we're talking about GPUs, and these are costly. And these are not just costly for Europe. These are, they are scarce resources. Okay, so this is what we need. So we need to make sure that we have different costs on maintenance, what we have now, keep pipeline services and quality assurance running, and then what is the evolution? Because from OpenAIRE, we know we started in 2008 publications, and now we are constantly expanding, okay? What is our cost recovery model? Of course, it's the funding resources. We are lucky to be in EU projects, but we know now that the EU in FP10 is shifting mentality, and they go into a more competitiveness idea. So how can Europe be more competitive? So what we need to do is, if we have funding from these sources, we need to adapt our mentality to the funder mentality. And this is tricky, and we may have a lag of a few years. Then we have tier subscriptions for services, for selected services. We have we're lucky to have national deployments in Europe. And we are considering, training, but not training for the graph and the open research information. We are considering training services for various groups. And of course, we have the partnerships where OpenAIRE is in the EOSQ node. We participate in data spaces, building LLMs for sciences. We do a lot of work with research infrastructures. In Europe, we have 56 infrastructures, so we are doing a lot of work. So there is a lot going on, and this is how we do it. Now, the current mix is 50 to 60 from EU projects, balance from fees and subscriptions. And what we would like to do is to have this, make the EU funding or other funding about 30 to 40% maximum. This is our goal in the next 3 to 4 years. Now, what are the challenges? I'm not, we know about the challenges is that, funding projects is unstable. We cannot really plan. Demand is growing. Okay, we are trying to reach a point, and then we have more and more and more to do. But what is very key here to think about the perception that for many organizations that open is free or that open is cheap. Okay, it's cheaper, but it's not cheap. And this is what we need to think about. Then, of course, the SLAs, when you start selling services or having subscriptions on services, once somebody is paying €1 for your service, then you're entering another situation where the SLAs are demanding with a before and after sales support. I put it as sales, but this is the reality, is that they're doing that. What we have the gaps in Europe is no long-term procurement model. ERA, in Europe, everything is done by the European research area. Now the EOSC, it's a bit weak, or in EOSC now the discussion and the dialogue is changing more to the computing and the network and these kinds and the analytics capacity. Where in the global, we see that there is a fragmented funding, joint sustainability mechanism, and we understand the global thing, but we have this problem in Europe, but our colleagues in La Referencia in Latin America have the same problem, and we have partners around the world who have the same problem. And this is something that the funders, they need to understand, is that research is global, okay? And where proprietary databases succeed and we may not succeed is because they have a global market, where at least for OpenAIRE, I can say, we have the European footprint, and we need to serve Europe first, okay, and then the rest of the world. Now, one of the questions that Bianca sent us is what meaningful support looks like, okay? Again, for Europe is secure baseline EU funding, national commitments. We are far from there from the national commitments. Otherwise, it's institutional commitments. And institutions, they increase, as I said before, they increase the overhead that we have, where, national commitments and national procurements are much better. The community is incentives for institutions and funders to invest in open infrastructures. We see that they are starting to do it, but, can they all do it at once? Can we, how can we give them incentives? And this is where, Bianca, will put our faith in the Barcelona Declaration movement. And then, of course, the shared investments on standards, corpora, we're talking about language models here, services to counterbalance the commercial silos. Now, what does this meaningful support look like concretely for us, for OpenAIRE? Okay, what we would like to have, for example, is this core infrastructure, computing, storage, graph, AI-ready GPUs. This is very, very important because the costs, they go up and up and up as size goes up, because in OpenAIRE, we not only have publications, we have software, we have data. Now we are going to have models. We are in quite a few projects, European funded projects, that we are expanding. And our fear is that after the project ends, is that we're going to have a very, very good graph with, that is expanded and it has, better quality, better everything. But then, the costs of making the graph have gone up. Then, so this national co-financing, support for standards and community networks, and this should not come to OpenAIRE, should not come to OpenAlex, should not come to OpenCitations, but they should be, member states or countries, they should make sure that they build the local, institutional, and national infrastructure that is, that we can be proud of and that we can use. Why am I saying that? Because if the national institutional infrastructure is better, with standards and everything that we agree, then our job is going to be, less. In the OpenAIRE graph, it's not about the aggregating. The aggregating is the easy part. The most of the money and the effort goes because we get crappy metadata, because we don't get good enough metadata, and this is something that we need to work on. So evolution of services, this is what I said is that competitive funding. We would be fine to have funding for the evolution of services. And then
Natalia, you have one minute. Sorry, I had to interrupt.
I have, this is my last slide. Okay, so we are done in time. So what I would like to say here is that, for us, it's a fact that OpenAIRE delivers European sovereignty because we know of these geopolitical tensions now, and we deliver it at a fraction of the commercial cost, okay? And this is the message that, the Barcelona Declaration could adopt and see how we make it. I wouldn't say visible because people are aware of that, but to translate that into actions, and this is very important. And this is my last slide. So I think I was in time. Thank you so much.
Hi everybody, Giambattista, I'm the Communication Director at OpenCitations, and together we'll be presenting this presentation, which is made together with Claudio Fabri, who is the Research Manager at OpenCitations. First thing first, I want to start with a sort of context about why we are here and why we are part of the Barcelona Declaration as supporters, since OpenCitations, since its foundation, has been it has been an open science infrastructure dedicated to the publication of open citation data, which is a fundamental kind of research information, since it enables the science policy decisions, as also make it possible a fair and equal research assessment. In particular, we have always advocated and worked to produce open research information, developing infrastructure technologies to maximize its sharing and reuse in different applicative contexts. So, as I said previously, we are supporters of the Barcelona Declaration, and we have also collaborated in different ways, for example, through the organization of the workshop on open citations and open SQL metadata at the University of Bologna, together with the Bologna meeting on open research information. Also, going to the next slide, we we convey these principles and our commitment through our mission statement, which is to harvest, publish, and preserve and provide accurate metadata in academic publications and their citations. And we do that in human and machine-readable formats for unrestricted reuse and analysis. This is made we make it possible through the services that we offer. The services that we offer are in particular the two main databases of OpenCitations, which are OpenCitations Meta, which is a database that stores and delivers bibliographic and metadata for all the publications involved in the index, which is per se a collection recording citations between bibliographic citation resources. The sources of OpenCitations are 5, and they are the one which are visible in this slide. But also you can see a scheme with the overlaps between our main sources, which is derived from the last dump of OpenCitations index dated back to July 2025, where we have had 2.21 billion unique citations. Also, well, this is a very quick overview about the users that use our data. We have a great community of users, which are also a variety of tools and academic independent projects using OpenCitations data. But it's just a quick glance on it, because I want to ask you and ask also to ourselves, OpenCitations, why OpenCitations does exist and why people use OpenCitations. We have found some answers to that, and they're part of what OpenCitations is. So OpenCitations is an entering source of comprehensive high quality scholarly bibliographic and citation metadata. We also enable the integration with many complementary sources of scholarly information. We provide the information in a human readable form, also interoperable machine readable linked open formats. But also our data are open because they're published under Creative Commons public domain waiver, and they can be freely reused for any purpose, including the commercial ones. In particular, OpenCitations is a free alternative to proprietary citation services, also sharing and advocacy for the values of open science. These last 2 points bring us to the next slide, which is about the 2 pillars behind the business plan and sustainability plan of OpenCitations. The 2 pillars in particular are the openness and the community. As I said previously, OpenCitations' main priority is to keep its services, but also the software and data always open under open licenses for fostering the maximum use. And also the community is a great part of OpenCitations' existence, since we provide our data and services for the community, and thanks to the support from the community, since OpenCitations is community-based and community-guided. In particular, these aspects of openness and community have always characterized OpenCitations since its foundation back to 2010, since we started as a 1-year grant-funded project at the University of Oxford. The founder, David Shopton, was at the time a professor at Oxford. But then, 2015, OpenCitations entered the University of Bologna through the person of the co-director Silvio Peroni. And at that point, the facilities of the University of Bologna hosted OpenCitations server. Okay, so this was like a natural passage. Fundamental for the sustainability of OpenCitations has been the involvement within the second Global Sustainability Coalition for Open Science Service round, since it helped us to develop the membership program that we still have to support our operations, but also made it possible to develop a more articulated governance for OpenCitations. And this is brief today. With OpenCitations hosted in the University of Bologna within the Research Center for Open Scholarly Metadata, and also with the membership program that make our activities possible, financially speaking. In particular, this kind of the business model of OpenCitations, which is shaped by openness, since, as I said previously, our services are free and will always remain free. So our activities, data, services, they generate no income. So OpenCitations business model is based on the in-kind support from the University of Bologna, which is a peculiar aspect of OpenCitations model. The time-limited grant income from public and private funding agencies, and the support from members and donors. This means that we have the University of Bologna supporting the operations for management, administration, and facilities. We participate in grant applications for specific projects, and we have a community of institutions that support OpenCitations through the community funding. This model is making it possible in these years to shift from sustainable to financially sustained, and we intend sustainability as depicted by the principles of open scholarly infrastructure. OpenCitations shares the principles of open scholarly infrastructures, and also we monitor our compliance with the principles. And in particular, concerning sustainability, a very recent news from the last monitoring that we are making in this month is that actually OpenCitations has a surplus and a contingency fund, which makes it possible for us to kind of depict the activities for the next 3 years. So we are not long-term sustainable yet, but in the midterm, we have a contingency fund. Also, the contingency fund also reconnects to the living will, which is something that we have always have had since all data are open and others can recreate our service. But in particular, during the last year, we have been working on the implementation of the living will. Since now the infrastructure through some implementations can be totally replicated with minimal effort through a container-based solution. So it's also another very recent news that we have. One of our limits is still in the governance, since OpenCitations is not namely stakeholder governed, in the sense that stakeholders are involved in our governance, but the advisory board, which is made up of the stakeholders, is not executive power. The executive power is in the hands of the director, even if the activities of the director and the decisions are guided by the International Advisory Board. So we still have to put the executive power into the hands of the stakeholders directly. However, the integration of the stakeholders in our existence is part of the community-based and community-guided approach that we have, which also is reflected in the community engagement, since we have many partnerships with other like-minded individuals, but also infrastructures and services working together in the provision and creation of the data through the community co-funding, that is the membership plan that we have, and the community participation in the development of the governance of OpenCitations. The stakeholders are integrated strategically through the governance and financially through the business model to the membership program, but also going back to the governance limit that we have been working that we have had internally in the advisory board of OpenCitations, and in particular the governance evolution working group has been working on a sort of evolution of the governance itself, which will be announced in 2026. Concerning the community, this is a quick glance on some of our partners, projects, networks that we have been working with in the past years, and which share the open science principles and advocacy. But specifically on the governance, this is the current governance of OpenCitations, which is, as you can see, under the Research Center for Pasquale Metadata, so within the University of Bologna. The members of OpenCitations, so the stakeholders of OpenCitations, are involved in the governance through the council, since the members, the member representatives are part of the council, which elects the advisory board, guiding the strategic activities of OpenCitations. The team is also part of the Research Center for Pasquale Metadata, and you can have a sort of greater view on the governance at this QR, which brings you to the OpenCitations website, where we have a section dedicated to the governance of OpenCitations. In particular, speaking about the team, this is our team. These are the people working at OpenCitations, and the team is a very important part of also of our sustainability plan, since most of the income that comes from the members, but also from the grants, is invested in the salaries for the team. Which is a great part of our expenses, also including the maintenance of the hardware of OpenCitations and some subscriptions to tools and services, for example, the website domain. So the community support is fundamental for supporting the activities that is making it possible for the team of OpenCitations to work on the services of OpenCitations. And as you can see, most of the team members are very young researchers, very motivated, and this is thanks to them that OpenCitations is growing day by day. The community can get involved, sharing the governance of OpenCitations, but also helping us to improve our software and services by, for example, giving feedback about our services and thus contributing to the provision, annotation, curation, and correction of OpenCitations data, and also to work together to advocate for open science and to broaden the scope of scholarly metadata. In the end, how can the Barcelona Declaration, but particularly the working group 5, help in the sustainability of an open infrastructure like OpenCitations? Well, we can collaborate on a technical and practical aspect, sharing expertise, developing common standards, but also we can collaborate for the policy and institutional guidance and support by promoting OpenCitations, but also other similar infrastructures and essential open infrastructures that are raising awareness among institutions and funders. We can work together for financial advice, trying to build funding models which are shared, and also securing international grants. And in the end, we can work as a community, fostering training and exchange of ideas and good practices, but also including the underrepresented institutions worldwide. That was my last slide, and thank you so much.
I would like to thank again very much Carl, Natalia, Chiara, and the organizations to participating, to being so open and honest in information sharing. I think that's a great good also of open infrastructures, that we can have these type of conversations with all the different infrastructures in the room. So I really appreciate that.